Welcome to the Desert Wanderers podcast. If you're new here, we bridge the gap between you and the person in the pew next to you. I interview priests, religious, and laity in our local Boise diocese, asking questions that'll help you navigate your vocation and build community wherever you are with whatever resources you may have. Let's build the city of God together. Welcome, Father Nathan Dail. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. It's great to have you here at my place again.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, this looks like a different setup. It's because it's part of your office. Mm-hmm. And I have my favorite parts of your beautiful shelving with all of your icons on it. But I wanted to ask you before we got started, what is your favorite part?
I think my favorite part is what the last addition to this whole thing was, which was a gift I received the first year I got here from someone very funny who I enjoy much. Was a dumpster. Because I put this whole thing together with seminarians because I wanted like beauty. Like this is the most beautiful space in everything in my domain, maybe next to the chapel, but like it's very artistically expressed. And you know, I like to follow the rule that you should have one place in your life that's just dedicated to beauty that you can rest in. And I wanted that to be a place where I meet other people. So this is where I spend the most time when I'm in the center, is in my office. When people want to meet me, they come to my office. And I wanted it in itself to be a place they could experience beauty just by the side. But the dumpster, someone gave that to me as a gift, and I was like, I want the cross of Christ right over that. It's like center, because it's modern, it's anachronistic, it doesn't really fit. But it's actually a sign to me that the present day art and situations, it's like the Lord is right here in the midst of all of it. So it's like bringing the new and the old together.
Well, and I like that I'm assuming it is on fire, right?
It is on fire.
Yeah, it is on fire.
Many people come to me with a lot of fire, so you know that's
what I was thinking. It's perfect that it's under Christ, because a lot of the times it feels like our world can be a dumpster fire. So.
In the old days, the cross would always be over the skull and bones of like, oh, it's over death, it's over sin, Adam and Eve, you know, like that represents them on Golgotha. And but no, in our modern day iconography, we go with the dumpster fire.
Well, for anyone that can't see the other side of your room too, you also have like just very beautiful art throughout. Like every wall is really intentional. Like even where the windows are, they're right behind the camera here. And you like fill every space with something beautiful and intentional. So it really, you feel that when you come into this room.
You know, I wasn't planning on bringing this up, but I think it's when we talk about the willpower, it's far easier for us to choose the good when we're inspired by beauty, right? Because the will is the faculty that helps us to choose what we should choose, coming from our intellect and our will and our memory, the three faculties of the intellect. But when we can see with our intellect what is beautiful and what is good, it makes it far easier to choose to orient ourselves in that direction. And so a lot of the artwork here is Christ, the Blessed Mother, icons of great saints that have gone before us, and it should inspire you when you look at it and be like, I want that, you know, and I want my life to go towards that, you know. So it's also a cheat code for the will, if you would like.
Again, this is kind of like we said, we haven't really started our conversation truly yet, but spoiler alert, we are going to talk about willpower and the will. But one of the things that I've noticed, so I think as a mom, oftentimes it can be that you get into a rut when you have little kids. You're like, my kids always look really nice, and then I look like a hobo. I always say that. Like,
Not today.
Not today. But recently I was listening to this woman, and she was talking about self-care, and I was just thinking, how often is it that I just don't feel good and I'm cranky just because like I haven't got ready for the day. So it's the same thing with willpower.
Yes.
That I feel so much better when I get up early and I take a walk by myself and have some prayer time. And like, does that still happen every day? No, obviously my schedule has to be a little more flexible, but like also like just being more intentional, even if half the day I'm in sweats or whatever, but like, especially when my husband comes home, like just looking nice so that selfishly I could get oh honey, you look so nice today. Like, you know what I mean? But I think it does help I think it does help
Sure.
the situation, and like you're saying, to choose better decisions when you take the time to be a little bit more intentional.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. I think that when we dress the part, our mind naturally changes. I'm going to get into people even say if you want to get the habit of going to the gym, the first thing you can start doing is just put on the clothes to go. And even if you don't go, like there's like you go from a 0 to at least like 40% chance of going if you just put on the clothes
Wow.
to go, because
Yeah.
it puts it in your mind like, okay, this is new orientation. So yeah.
I think, the other thing is like, how am I ever I'm gonna have a podcast coming up on how to do it all. I'm interviewing Hope Ryan and Carol Brown.
Yeah.
Because they homeschooled, they worked, and they took care of the house, and it just is like, how do you do it all? Because then one of the questions is, how do you have time to work out?
Yeah.
And it was actually one of my friends who's a physician who is like, why don't you just take a jump rope, and when your kids are at the park, you just jump rope while they're there, like, you know.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah. So, anyways. Well, okay, we've kind of already, spoiler alert, talked about our conversation, but when I hear willpower, I don't necessarily think Catholic, first off. Like, you know, you hear willpower, and it's usually like, in my head, it's like, okay, willpower, like not eating the dessert and going to the gym. Like,
those two go hand in hand. Some people go to the gym so they can eat dessert, though.
That's true. That's how I was in college. I was like, I'm not in track for the track.
Yeah.
I'm in here for the food. But anyway, so what do Catholics mean when we talk about the word will, or the will?
Yeah, so voluntas in Latin, the will is the faculty of our soul to choose what is good, right? That's the whole purpose of our will, is so that we have the ability to choose what is good. And that's why we'll talk about it later, but you're not truly free when you're choosing what is bad for you. That's an enslavement, right? And we could say like, oh, I want it, therefore it's my will, but the will is there to help us to move towards what is good. The faculties of our intellect primarily is, it can be illuminated to know the good. Like the question is like, what is good? Like for example, that young man that comes to Christ. Good master, what must I do to go to inherit eternal life? And he says, lists off the commandments, and he says, these I have kept from my youth. So he's had an understanding of what to do on the baseline, and his will has been formed to do that. He has chosen that. Well, then when Christ says, if you want to be perfect, he gives him an image of what perfection is. And he says, sell everything, you'll have treasure in heaven, so put your hope in heaven, and come follow me. And the young man, what? Went away
And didn't
sad. Yeah, he went away sad because he couldn't do it. It was too hard.
Right.
So he wasn't really free. The will is the ability to hear what God wants, to know what he wants, to on a natural level, supernatural, and the freedom to respond to the good.
Yeah. I feel like it's that detachment. And it's interesting because detachment is different for each person too.
Yeah.
Right? What they have to detach from. I should have a whole podcast just on detachment.
Is that right? Yeah.
should.
You've been working on that for a while?
Well, I think that's something that as you grow in the spiritual life, wherever you start, you realize you have to start detaching from things. Like initially it might be in a very simplistic way. When you're young, you might think, okay, well, I just have to stop sinning, but that's still a form of detachment, right? But as you grow older and you might not have these heavy mortal sins, or you might struggle less with certain things, I think the detachment comes in more subtle ways that we're extra comfortable with.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
For sure.
One of them, and some of them are good, right? Like that if you're a married person, your spouse and your children, ultimately detaching and saying, Lord, your will be done. And then also saying, you do everything well. Those are kind of things I've been thinking about a lot lately too, is you still have to, even though those things are good, detaching from good things, comforts.
It's like as you're going up a mountain, the higher you climb, the less you usually can bring with you.
Right.
And that's how it is. I think with everything in success, you get more and more focused on what do I want, like what are my goals, what do I need to do, and then you let go. You have to detach from whatever is in the way. I was just talking with one of the students, and they asked me just randomly, actually before this, we even talked about this interview right now, they were like, what's the most important habit you think I should work on? And I was like, for anybody, I would say waking up early. Because I know that's
so
the hardest, it's the hardest one.
I know.
But when you do that, it immediately, you have to detach from so many things, even the night before. That means that you're gonna put the phone down earlier, you're gonna rest your mind earlier, because you know, like, if I don't go to sleep early, I'm gonna feel really tired in the morning. So all of a sudden your night has to get better put together. And it also means you're probably not gonna be snacking as much at nighttime, so that's gonna get better. Hopefully, like, you'll be praying a little bit more before you go to bed, the grace for it, and then you get up early, and then you have the whole day. So it's a lot of detachment that comes from choosing the good, you know?
And it's also, I think, too, is with this, when we're talking about willpower, it's also like forming the habits to continue to do it, right? Because you can choose the will, you can choose a good once, but I think it is harder to choose it, because I'm thinking about getting up early, right? I was doing the whole circadian rhythm routine for a while, where we were like, no lights. This was pretty intense. My husband was like, are you making us Amish? And I'm like, I would try if I could. But we were like, tried to like keep the lights off at night after the kids went to bed, so they go to bed at 8, and just like sit until it got dark and then go to sleep. And you felt like you get tired. You do. You get tired if there's no lights on.
Bumping into each other a lot, probably too.
Well, luckily we have lots of windows, and you know it's summer, so we're not like, there's still dark, like light out until like
so you just
10.
Let it get dark.
Yeah, just let it get dark. And then what happens though is you go to bed earlier, and then you wake up refreshed at like 6:30, like you're
on your own.
Yeah, without. I mean, we have a big light right in front of our window that we sleep in that's attached to the, but like we don't have control over that light, and so we don't keep our shades closed, or we keep our blackout curtains closed.
Yeah.
But most of the time, just the sun peeking through like the top of the blackout curtains would wake me up. Yeah. Wow. Just by like not looking at your phone and doing all that. But all this to say is we had a big week last week with just like health stuff, and we were out of our routine, and sure enough this week I have not gotten up once before 8.
Yeah, and that's it, though, you know that you're getting better though when you do that, and you're like, I want to get back to that. You know, because like true good habits, like the will, when we're having a strong will isn't a good thing in itself, because you can have a strong will that's oriented towards evil, right? That's oriented towards a bad direction that God doesn't want us. You could be extremely power hungry. You could have a strong work ethic, but it's taking you away from, you know, what is virtue, what's holiness, what's heaven, what's your vocation type of thing, right? So strong will in itself isn't good, but it's when it's forming habits that help your entire life to get better according to your state, right? So when we're talking about habits, I think everything when we talk about the will has to come from like, what's the vision of your life? Like, what does God want of you right now? What's the best thing you can do to go on a certain direction? And those habits, it's kind of like St. Francis de Sales. I did a Lenten kind of mission on him just this last Lent, and he talks about the devout life, and he says true devotion should make the spiritual life and what you do easier, more joyful, and frequent. Right? And so like, and that's the same thing with the will. It's like the more you get better habits, it's easier, it should make you more joyful, and it's something that can be repeated over and over again, so you grow in that path.
So the whole idea of this podcast actually came from the episode with Father Vogel on pride that we did during Lent. And I'm pretty sure he mentions this, because I said, well, how do you know that you are growing in virtue? And he mentioned that it becomes easier, more frequent, and like, and that's how you can determine which virtues that you need to work on more than others, right? So you kind of explained thus far what the will is, why it's important, but you touched on this briefly. How is it different how is it different to have a will that's formed correctly versus just a will that's strong and is able to make you do difficult things?
Well, our will is only as good as it's in the hands of God. The enemies of Christ, that St. Paul and St. John talk about, the enemies of the gospel that are working against it, right? If you really want a very concrete example, Judas had a very strong image of his mind of what the Messiah should be, and he was very determined. So did the Jews of that time, the Pharisees of that time, of we know what our Messiah should look like, and our willpower is going to fight for that. You could even bring that to, and I know it's a hot topic, but you bring that to the German cardinals and bishops who are trying to bless same-sex couples and whatnot, going against what the Vatican's asking, right? They have an ideal of what should be and a strong will trying to push it. Same way the SSPX, they have a vision of what the church should be, and they have a strong will to say, even in the midst of this, we haven't got our permissions, but we're going to now ordain bishops without authorization from Rome. Like, both of those, extremes are individuals, church movements that have an idea of what should be, what is the good, and a strong willpower to carry it out. But it's not going in accordance with God's will, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so we could have a very strong will, but it can be taking us in a direction that the Lord doesn't want us to go, right?
I feel like this goes a little bit into forming your conscience, which we talked about previously with Deacon Bill Burns a little bit. I think these are really closely related. But what do we do in situations that there is a point where the church does need to stand up and say, hey, this isn't what the Bible teaches. This isn't what the church has thought of for the last however many years. So how do we balance our will to correct, to counter something, or how do we know that it's the right thing?
I think that's easier. That's the easiest aspect. So when we're talking about, for my obedience, it's like, I have a strong will to evangelize in Peru. The church isn't asked me to do that. So I could have a great desire for that, but it's not being asked. Or I could, I could have a strong desire to unite the East and the West Church, the Orthodox, right? So it's like, I'm going to learn the Orthodox rite, the Byzantine rite, so I can go and celebrate with them, and then try to, unite as much as we can here locally. The church is like, I don't have the permission to do that, right? If our willpower is ever choosing things that are outside the teaching of the Catholic Church, I think that's the easiest thing, because just by obedience alone, it won't work, right? So there's two ways of discernment. One is, it doesn't matter how I feel about praying in my liturgy of the hours. It doesn't matter how I feel about celebrating Mass or hearing confessions, or even coming to the office. By obedience, these are things that I need to do. So I have to make sure my will is doing that regardless of how I feel. I think the harder question is, how do I know that I'm choosing the right habits individually in the way I form my life? Because there's a lot of different options you can do. Not everyone has to wake up super early. Not everyone has to eat the same foods. Not everyone's going to have the same, exercise program. Not everyone's going to have the same prayer program. Not everyone's going to have the same charisms. And so I think that's a lot more localized in this importance of what is God asking me to do specifically, and how I live out my vocation, my Catholic faith.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it even comes down to what vices you have and what virtues you need to work on too, right? Those are all going to be very personalized to each person. So
you got to look at your life. I experienced a kind of a conversion within the priesthood, where at one point I was really engaged in the center here because we were doing so much, but I was staying up too late because students always, everything happens after 8 o'clock, and so I wasn't getting home till 10, not going to sleep till like after 11, after like prepping everything. Then I'd get up early, try to do my holy hour, go to the gym and all that, but it was always pushed later and later because I was sleeping, and I just felt like I was no longer living kind of in my own boat. I just jumping from boat to boat, like thing to thing for other people's schedules. And I just remember this one was a very special moment where I was asking God, what do you want me to do? Like, what do I need to change in my life? And I woke up the next morning, and it was like 5:45 in the morning, and I just remember, like, with my mind's eye, I woke up and I just saw this man like walking into the desert, and I knew he was like a desert monk, and I knew that what he was, I wanted to be. I wanted to learn from that. And I immediately got up after that. Like, it was just such a quick moment, but it was filled me with so much fire, and got ready, went to the chapel, and I just started praying, like, what does this mean for my life? And what I was, immediate illumination was like, I need to bring the desert, like ritualistic desert father life into my personal life as a diocesan priest. I'm not called to go out and live in Marymount, but I am called to bring those charisms here in how I live my life. And so then I started doing all these things with my will I'm like, okay, what does that actually mean? Does it mean getting up at 4 or 5 or 6? Does it mean fasting more? Does it mean having specific or in a specific horarium of when I'm in here, when I'm at home, how much I'm reading, studying? It was all these questions on, okay, what does a desert monk almost look like, and how do you bring that spirituality into diocesan priesthood, specifically in a student center? And I spent the next year of my life with my intellect imagining and with my will trying new things. And what I found, just like the psalm says, that he who labors without the Lord labors in vain, while the Lord, pours gifts on his beloved while they slumber. And one interpretation of that psalm is that God, when you're working in alignment with his specific will for your life, he will make it easy. It will be light. You won't be like forcing it. It'll bring you life. It'll be difficult, as all things are, but it'll be something that you see so much fruit coming from it, and you'll feel inspired. And so all I received was that vision of like, I need to form my life more as almost a monk internally and in my heart. But then the Lord, like a father, like, okay, try different things. I'll let you know, and I'll help you, But I think that's where our free will, I think he's fascinated. I think God is very attentive and interested in watching how we respond to his illuminations. And it shows, like, that's why Christ spoke in parables. He spoke in parables because if he just told us exactly what we needed to know and do in every moment, we become like robots. And it's like yes or no. But it's a mystery, and it's a relationship when he wants to know, are you willing to look into this and grapple with these ideas and find out what it means for you now and what it means for you 10 years from now. You don't get that with a math problem. You understand it, you move on, right? But you have to grapple with mysteries in our life and our will and God's will for us. It's all a mystery that we get to choose to, give to him and to wrestle with, or not, or go our own way. And there's a lot of evil people, like we would say, people who use their will for evil purposes, that are very strong, very disciplined, but they're not oriented towards God. They actually use their will to just build up their own life, right, apart from God, which is like the essence of original sin, was I'm grasping with my will, the forbidden fruit, to know for myself what is right and what is wrong. And many even Christian people, we've all been there, it's like we can use our willpower and we can construct the life that we want, but it's a life apart from God. I think God wants to see, it's almost like a dance, He wants us to be co-authors of our life. So he doesn't tell us everything. But then how do we discern what is of him, what is not? Well, what does it do for me? Like, is this, it might be difficult, but is it giving a lot of fruits to myself? Am I able to love better? Do I have more energy to give to others? Am I more patient? Am I more kind and more gentle? So I think you have to bring in the fruits of the Holy Spirit when you're discerning your willpower, your habits, I would say. And is it helping me in these areas, or is it hurting me in these areas?
Yeah, because one of the things, as you were speaking, I was thinking, well, I'm sure people would think that it's a good if they're, neglecting their duties and becoming very wealthy and, and I think most of it comes down to like neglecting your duties. It might feel good to be like, oh, well, like anything in extreme, right? Like I eating like a whole cake. That felt so good. You know what I mean?
Well,
or like,
have you heard of subspecium bonum? Subspecium bonum means under the species of the good. And so our mind, for the most part, will not do evil. Our mind will tell us that what we're doing is under the species of good before we do it. So if you're on a diet and you've already made the resolution of I'm not going to eat cake for the month, and then you go to a party and there's your favorite carrot cake or chocolate cake right on the table, you have to get to a point as you're kind of debating and like, oh, I want it, but I don't want it, I shouldn't. At some point, the person who's going to take that and break their promise to themselves is they're going to say, well, it's actually a good thing that I do this because my will's been getting weak. I should do this so I can just remember it, then I can leave it behind and maybe I can go even longer afterwards, or I've deserved it because I've done so much before and I want to enjoy the party, therefore it's best that I take this cake, or else I'll just be resentful for the rest of the night and no one wants that. And so you have to convince yourself first in your mind that what I am doing is justified.
Yeah.
And so our mind, that's why it is that discernment so strong, because we will always convince ourselves of what is good and what is wrong.
So this kind of leads me into the next question, which is, and you've mentioned it, you've kind of hinted at it a little bit earlier, but how has original sin affected our wills?
Concupiscence, primarily, a few different ways. One, because we chose against God, we knew the commandment, but we chose against it, our intellect is darkened. And St. Thomas even says, like, sin, the more we sin, it darkens our intellect. So we do not even know the difference anymore. And I mean, very basic example, but especially with the sexual liberation that's come about, it's like you just see how it continues to fracture and to fracture of the experience, or even who am I and what is gender and what is man and what is woman. All of that gets more and more clouded because the more you engage with sin, the more it's harder for you to see right from wrong. Our intellect becomes like fractured and darkened. The best word is probably darkened. It's kind of like when you're driving and you get a bunch of stuff on your windshield and you can't see clearly. That's what happens in our own intellect, right? That's why Fyodor Dostoevsky, one of my favorite authors, he says, has one of his characters say, above all, do not lie to yourself. Because once you lie to yourself, then no one can convince you of your own lies, and you'll only go deeper and deeper into that. So we have to make sure, like, our intellect, that's why we need the church. We need revelation. We need God, and we need the church telling us what we should do and what we shouldn't do based on 2,000 years of what has been passed down, unchanged. So our intellect, number one, we don't see clearly. Number two, our will itself is weakened. It's like St. Paul. He says, I have the two laws within me, the law of grace and the law of sin. I know the good, but the willing is not there. Why do I do the things that I hate? The will to do what is good is within me, but so is the will to do evil. So even St. Paul, one of the greatest saints, which should show you that you shouldn't feel bad for, not being immaculate and just, I want to get up at 6, I'm going to get up at 6 every single time. It's like, no, that's war is within every single one of us, of the division of the will. there's a weakness of the will, confusion of the intellect, and there's also concupiscence, which
Yeah, right,
yeah, right.
Well, so my understanding, concupiscence is like the sin that we got of like our bodies, right? Like gluttony, lust,
Yep.
sloth.
Our body, yeah, even Aristotle talks about this. Even before, without revelation, he said, there's something unique about human beings where we're not naturally oriented towards good. We're not oriented to eat right in moderation. We're not oriented towards exercise and movement, even though it's good. We're not oriented towards study, but we're oriented towards, sloth, towards excess or deficiency in what we eat. And we're oriented towards laziness, these kinds of things. So, and lust, obviously. So even Aristotle, looking at the human person, just philosophically speaking, could say something went wrong within us because we don't act in accords with our highest nature as all animals and plants do. They just act according to what they are. We as human beings, it's almost like to be good, you have to swim up the river, against the river, the Boise River. You can't just float. If you float, you get worse and worse.
I love what Father Vogel said in our episode with pride. He talked about, he's like, have you ever thought why it's hard to grow like good plants? He's like, I'm like, well, because there's weeds he's like, but why do weeds grow so well? He's like, why is it hard to grow good plants, but weeds just spring up?
Yeah.
Like, he's talking about the toil, like part of the remedy for, or I like how Father Mike Schmidt says, but there's a remedy for the sin in the garden is actually like that we toil, but it's part of it, like it is forming our good, like us to choose the good by having to work hard at these things.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's a great image right there, though. It's like no one has to work to make weeds grow.
No.
No one has to work to become filled with vice and sin. It's just our natural state. That's why we need, we would say that what grace does for us through the sacraments is it illumines the intellect, like it heals the wounds of sin. Like should be noted right now as we're talking about fallenness of the will, that like the Protestants, the difference between Protestant theology and Catholic theology is Protestantism says that our will is broken. It's like, Martin Luther said the bondage of the will. Like we are in bondage to sin, and therefore nothing we ever do will be sufficient, and only Christ, who is perfectly obedient to the Father, only He can save us, and He covers us because our will is so deformed. The unfortunate thing about Luther, because he didn't start out bad, like some of his complaints, some of them were very legit. He had a lot he could have shared, like St. Francis of Assisi definitely lived a life of, he lived a way that pointed a finger at the church of like we were insufficient by how he lived, by embracing poverty and such selfless chastity and hope for heaven and charity for others. But Martin Luther saw all the problems, and instead he just kept, this is wrong, and then getting outside the grace of the sacraments, like he also started giving himself over to sin, but then he became more and more enslaved to it, right? And so they would say that our will is completely binded by sin, and there's nothing we can do, that we're broken. Catholic theology is that we're bent, not broken. Like the pipes were bent, we're more oriented towards self-love, just our own ego, whatever satisfies us, against God and against others. But that can, by the grace of the sacraments, be reformed to take us higher, to take us out of ourself for the good of others.
Yeah. How do the sacraments, what do the sacraments bring to us choosing the will, or choosing the good and forming our will?
So I think it goes to the like it reforms what was broken by sin. So our number one, the intellect to know God, to know His love, to know His will. So it illumines us to know the right way, the right worship, and the right way to live, and the right way to act, right? Number one. Number two, it strengthens our will to love God, right? So it gives us the ability to choose what is right. And grace is very much, when you're going towards, it's interesting because you sometimes have people come into the Catholic Church and it's like, you ask them, what's been your experience? And they're like, oh, it's a lot more guilt. And it's like, oh, that's too bad, you know? Like, you don't want that. Like, but they said, well, I've been living in such a way where I was sinning for a long time. I didn't realize it in these different ways. And now they're like, it's almost like you've been living in a house that was dimly lit. And they're like, the more I come to the sacraments, the brighter it gets, and the more I see that things are stained, furniture is overturned, and I'm like, I need to clean my house. I need to clean my house. Now, you should get to a point where your house is pretty well put in order, and you're just focusing on intimacy with the Trinity, right?
Right.
But that's what the sacraments do. They illuminate, if we truly open ourselves to it, they illuminate the areas of our soul that need to be cleansed with grace. But one thing I was just considering is, when Christ talks about, he gives that parable about the man who was exorcised of the demons, and the demon going out into an arid place wants to go back, so he grabs 7 other demons even worse than himself and brings them into the house. And coming to the house, he finds it swept clean and put in order, but empty. And because of that, they take over, and he goes, and how great the destruction was. Why do you think he makes that clarification of swept clean and put in order, but empty?
I think just off the top of my head it's like, this is what I would put it in modern terms. It's like going to confession and yet not filling it with anything good. So maybe you've gone to confession for whatever sin it is, and then you go back, and although you're not doing that act, you're not filling your life in with something better to take its place. Yeah,
and especially a person, because the biggest thing we've lost was Christ, was God, the intimacy with the Trinity. And they even say every addiction that we have is usually something we're trying to replace relationship with.
Yeah.
So our will is made to take us into perfect relationship. That's what we should always remember. I'm made for relationship. I'm made for love. And my will should be taking me into a direction where my life becomes more filled with God and with others. And that's where, again, you can have a strong will, but it's not taking the right direction. So the sacraments should illumine us. It should order our life, but it also should bring about a deeper intimacy, that our house should be filled with community, with communion, and that protects us from the evil one.
So I think going on from that point, my question would be, okay, so we've kind of talked about how important the will is and how we can strengthen it by the sacraments, and it's not all just us. We don't have to rely on it ourselves. We're given this grace by God through these different things. But how do we get, I always think this is the best question. How do we even get there if we don't want to? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes it's just I know I would feel better if I went out and walked or did whatever, right? Or I know I'll feel better if I just get out of the situation, but I just don't want to. I don't want to.
That's why they said motivation can never take you. There's no one who's ever been successful at anything because they were motivated. Are you motivated to get up for your kid in the middle of the night when they need you? Or are you
bound by duty?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Mike Tyson, so there's motivation, there is discipline, and there's obsession. I should do that. Motivation, discipline, obsession. And motivation is I want to, but that I want to will come and it will go. Mm-hmm. Duty is I have to. I have the discipline, is I have to. I need to do this. Obsession is I can't go without it, right? And being a mother, oftentimes, like you're invested in that relationship. You could, I don't know if it's discipline or obsession.
Probably closer to obsession. I mean, it's funny because this is one of those things that it's like, I'm obsessed about certain parts. Like I'm obsessed with like the person, right? Like I love this person. And that's when you're like, oh, it's really hard to give that over to God sometimes, right? Because you're like wanting to make sure that everything happens to your child in the way that you want it to happen, instead of just like, your will be done, Lord. Like if they get sick, like you do all things well. Like there has to be some good that comes out of this, right? So there's that part when I would say obsession, but at, you know, like 3 a.m. and your husband's hearing the baby cry too, and you're just like, you gonna get that? Like,
I'm obsessed with my bed right now. I'm not giving this up.
And then he looks at you and goes, are you gonna get that? And you're like, oh, okay. And then one of you eventually caves and goes.
You're hoping the baby caves, like, just stop crying.
Sometimes that happens. You're like, you wait a couple seconds, they're like crying for like a minute, and you're like, and then they stop and you're like, yes. You know, roll over and go back to sleep.
I sometimes wonder if like God, he makes us more and more free in our life to test us, like, of like, how much do you actually want this?
Yeah,
you know?
like I would say, I think that's the biggest, when I was talking about detachment earlier, and correct me if I'm not getting what you just said, but what I think it is like, I became less detached to the, like I said, the big sins, and you realize I have to change, like I have to continually choose, like, do I want to be, like, controlling? Like, does it have to go my way, right? Like, I think that's a big one. And although that is, I think, a sense of pride, or it can be, it's so subtle and it's so comfortable, right? That it's like God being like, are you going to love this person for who they are? Or are you going to try to control them just so you're comfortable?
That's a really good point,
Right? Like, I feel like that's something that I'm working on right now a lot, is just realizing that it's a different call to love, and it almost feels, I've actually said this to my husband, I'm like, it almost feels like I need to put every ounce of my attention and like my being towards actually loving how Christ loves, because it's hard. Like it's very hard. Sorry, I don't know if that's necessarily what you're talking about, but that's kind of what it's like. My detachment to sin when I was younger has now transformed into these little tiny decisions of like, are you gonna love or not?
Are you gonna give up? No, I'm gonna keep going. And isn't that what Christ went through on the cross? It's like how far would he go to keep loving us through his passion, being rejected, being beaten, no water, no food, being rejected by the very people he came to save, being scourged, being crowned, carrying the own cross, falling, getting up, being nailed, then lifted up. It's almost like his whole story is, at what point do you give up on love? And he goes all the way, you know. And I think that's very much our life. That's what marriage is. That's what your vocation is, you know. I don't know if life always gets easier, but it tests how far you're willing to go for love. But as far as like the motivation, discipline, and obsession is, you know, Mike Tyson said that discipline is doing what you don't want to do it, but doing it like you love it. It's like, I'm going to do it, I'm going to give it my all, no matter what I feel. And I think like the baseline of where we need to get as Catholics in our life, the only things that really remain is what is discipline and obsession. You know what I mean? And then like, because motivation, if you live your life by motivation, you'll never have a steady relationship. You'll never have a steady like diet. You'll never have a steady exercise routine. You'll never have a steady sacramental life, because there's a lot of times when you have to go to Mass when you don't want to. So a lot of times when you're tempted to sin and you want to, you know, it's like whenever we try to judge what we do by motivation, it's just momentary. I think motivation is like a wind we should be extremely grateful for when it comes. But discipline is like, I'm rowing. I'm gonna get there because that's where I have to get. So I don't care if the wind's with me or against me or nothing, I'm rowing there. Yeah. Obsession, I think obsession comes to the level of heaven and our vocations, of like, I will never give up on fighting for my soul, for God, and I will never give up on the vows I made. Like, that's gotta be, like, I think that's what it is to value, that's what it is to be baptized. I'm forever renouncing sin and everything's to be for heaven. That's what it is when you vow yourself to another human being. It's, I will never give up on you. Hopefully it's not the obsession, like the new movie that just came out.
Oh, I don't know.
That's right.
I know that I run a podcast, but I am so not up to relevant things.
It's actually, I preached a homily on it because I thought it was a very fascinating movie on our times, because it's all about relationships. Like a guy who wishes a woman would love him more than anybody else in the world. And he has no other relationships. And then, so it actually goes in line with this, like, why does God give us free will? Like, why is will so important? She becomes possessed by another entity that is completely obsessed with him. Like, and it's not even like clear like it's another entity, but the person that loves him is no longer her because she didn't actually love him. She's just now compulsed by her will to love him. And yet now she has like two wills fighting within her. The one that is, I wasn't interested in you, you're like a brother to me, and this other one that's obsessed with him. But it's one of the clearest signs to me, that at least I've seen in a while, of why God demands free will. Because if he forced us to choose him, it's no longer us. She's literally battling the entire film of like, it's not me, I'm not choosing this. And that's
Would you recommend people watch it?
I did preach on it, and it's funny. It's rated R, and it's
so there's some warnings.
yeah, there's definitely warnings. Like, and I had like older, like a lot of people, my generation and the college students below me, a lot of them had gone to see it, and it's a scary film, just the idea of it, and it's filmed masterfully. It was made for $750,000, and it made, I think they're almost to 500 million. They haven't seen a movie that has grossed so much income since like E.T.
Wow.
And it was one of those films that kept getting more every single week because everyone was talking about it. And everyone's like, oh, I know what that's like, to Oscar Wilde. Bishop Barron did a good talk on it too. He loved it. And he's like, it's the whole Oscar Wilde, the only thing worse than not getting what you want is getting what you want, And so it's a meditation on what you think will make you happy, but ends up destroying you. It's also a meditation on just the emptiness of this generation right now and their fear of relationships. And lastly, and I think most importantly, from what I saw, the necessity of free will, that God would never force us to love him because it's not us if we do. And so that's why our freedom, our will is so sacred to God, because it's the only way we can be in a relationship with him.
I do have a question. I don't know if this is a question more than just a comment, I guess, on it. I haven't seen the film, so I wouldn't know, but I think another temptation maybe of the guy, right, is he wants this girl to be obsessed with him. But that, like, I don't know if he realizes in the movie that doesn't fill him up. Like, that's
exactly what it is, yeah.
Because I think in marriage, another reason that could be so relevant is in marriage, how many times, I mean, I've heard it from the Swaffords, I've heard it from all these Catholic speakers that say, your husband will never fulfill you. And I knew that, like, internally. She's like, the only thing that'll ever fulfill you is Jesus. It's like one thing to like hear it, and it's another thing to live it and then realize, oh, I am trying to get my happiness from my spouse and not from the Lord. Like, you have to, I feel like it's something that you kind of have to live no matter what people tell you.
Yeah. And that's why, like, your will, when you're organizing your life, it should be a way that it's not just, oh, I go to exercise more, or I wake up earlier more, or whatever, I get up. It's, how am I filling it with Christ? Because Christ, the will should organize our life in such a way it's like a canal that can then bring the water. The purpose is the water, but without the willpower, without organizing our life in such a way, then like our life with Christ becomes like a swamp. It's just like the water's stagnant, right? It's not doing anything. But the holy, like the reason that the scriptures oftentimes describe the Holy Spirit and the grace that flows from heaven is like rivers of grace flowing from the throne of the Lamb, watering the world, and those who stand by it are fruitful. We should build our life in such a way that the river of grace can flow into it, but that's the purpose of it. It's not just with the habit in itself type of thing. And when we get that communion, then everything else flows.
So let's talk about self-discipline and self-denial, and what I think like an older term is like mortification. Like, are those beneficial for us?
Absolutely, yeah. And for every time you say yes, you have to say no. Like when Christ says you must take up your cross, the first thing he always says whenever he invites somebody is take up your cross, right? You have to let go in order to come forward. And that's an act of faith. But that's what you do when you meet someone you love. That's what you do when you choose a career. You have to say no to everything else. When you choose a family, you know, we're constantly having to say no. And I think even the Blessed Virgin Mary, an intense life of mortification where how many times did she have to say no to protect her fiat to God? And I think there's a few places in our life where we say yes that totally define the trajectory of our life. And that's why you have to say a lot of no's to protect that moment when you do say yes, right? Yeah. And so with anyone who ever gets a new habit formed, for example, of like waking up early, like this is the easiest one, but I think it's the game changer. When you wake up early so you can pray and go to the gym, for example. People who do that, they feel so much better that it's no longer about the self-denial. It's like, I love what I get from that. And that's the goal. That's when it becomes a habit. When it becomes a habit, like habits make you happy. Good habits, like vice makes you sad. It feels good in the present. Watch how often I do things during my week, my day, where it feels good in the moment, but it's terrible for hours after, right?
Yeah.
And if I start measuring my life between how often I do those things that I feel good in the moment and make me feel terrible and bitter and angry against others, myself and whatever, and guilty, versus when do I choose the things that are harder but good, and then it fills me with a lot of life and joy after the fact. And the more we do the more we choose the good, then the better our life becomes. Like habits make you happy. That's what Aristotle would say. Habits are the secret to a happy life, you know? Yeah. So it's not about just what we're dying to, it's about what you get from it. And nobody who lives a life like that is bitter.
Are there practical, I know you have some more than getting up early in the morning, but are there practical ways we can practice self-denial as lay people specifically?
Yeah, I think the greatest ones that come to us are what inspire us in our vocation, right? So if you're young and you're single, some of the most important things is don't look for your adventure on your phone. Like find ways to put the phone away. Yeah, and it's like, are you looking for community in the world, friendships in the world, connection in the world? And to the degree that you do that, you're going to meet more people, you're going to have more opportunities for relationships, and you know, your life is going to get a lot better. So I think that's one of the most important things, like with the phone. Wherever they say, like wherever you get dopamine without sacrifice is going to hurt you long term, right? And so you kind of have to discern where are the places I get cheap dopamine in my life. It could be from food, it could be from alcohol, it could be from scrolling, those kind of things. But dopamine should be a reward. That feel good energy should be a reward of pushing myself to do something where I'm uncomfortable. So I do think people have to step back, take it to prayer, and Lord, like where do I need to grow? Because it's also prudential judgment. Not every one of us is called to work on the same thing at the same time. Right? And so when you can talk to other people, I think one of the most important things is for young people, well, anybody, to have male-female friendships. Like the guys who have really helped me the most to look at my life, married men and other priests, I talk to men who I respect. Yeah. And I find out what are their habits and what can I bring into my life, what can I learn from, type of thing. And I think when you can do that, when you have people around you who you're kind of motivating, learning from, that will help you to see more clearly what do you objectively need to work on.
Isn't that like the saying, like, you are the sum of your 5 closest friends?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you're asking your friends about virtue and vice and will and direction and they have no answer for you, maybe look at some other other friendships, you know. But it's cool, like even just last night I was talking to, you know, some of the guys I live at the house with, and we all made a 6:15 rule that if someone's sleeping past 6:15, we get to come wake them up. You know, and so it's like it's gonna be some anger in the mornings, but it's gonna be good for us long term, you know.
How can we? So one of the things that we haven't touched about is kind of scrupulosity. So my question is, how can we tell that our self-denial is leading us to Christ versus just building us to do things that aren't being asked of us? Because that's true. I mean, someone can be really, I think, can fall into scrupulosity and be like, I just really need to self-deny all these things and take on these miseries that God's not actually asking me to take on.
For sure. That's where I say friendship is the most important thing. You need other people who see your life, who know you, who speak the good and help you to discern that. Number 2, you got to look at the fruits of what you're doing. Is the fruits lead me to closer to God or closer to other people? And also think about, like, does it make you more at peace with yourself, peace with your life? Like, I think everyone should, if you're trying to evaluate your life, I think the number one thing is you have to, what's a vision of my life? What do I want to go for? What do I want to cultivate? What inspires me? And then take some habits that would take you in that direction of, like, disciplining the will, whether it's what you're eating, if it's how much screen time you have, if it's what you exercise, if it's walking outside more and just like being in the present moment, learning to be without music, right? Like just being more in the whatever you have to do. But you make a few things. You don't do anything big, but then you have to look, what are the fruits of the Holy Spirit here? So I think, like, having next to it, love is the fruits of the Holy Spirit: love, joy, peace, generosity, long-suffering, chastity, all these things. Like, is that filling my life, you know?
And for the last question, what is the one thing the listener should do tonight to help start having more self-discipline?
Turn off all input, audio or visual, an hour before you go to bed. And follow your advice, turn off the lights too. You know, it's like, I think that if you give the last hour of the day to just be in silence, or talk to people around you who you're living with, but you're not listening to anything. Even better, if you can just like spend that time, you know, if you want to read a little bit, okay, but just spend that time without being inundated with noise. I think the 2 most important things, what you do at night, an hour before you go to bed, and the hour when you wake up. If you can get those 2 things in line, then the rest of the day, it's the bookends. The rest of the day, you'll be okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast again.
Yeah, I love it.
Is there so if someone is listening to this and says, this is amazing, I would really like to help support you in your mission here at Bronco Catholic. Is there any way they can get into contact with you, or how can they help? Do you guys need anything as the school year starts in?
Yeah, the biggest thing we're looking for actually is with the students on Newman Nights, we make them dinners. So if you know of anyone who'd be willing to help make dinner for 70 students on Thursday nights, we're looking for Newman Night cooks. That's a big thing.
Awesome. Do you have a link for like a sign up?
BroncoCatholic.org. Everything's right there.
Wonderful.
Right on the top. But thank you for asking. Please make us food, healthy food, good food.
Will do.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Father.
You're welcome. God bless you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Desert Wanderers. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up as well as subscribe down below. We're produced by Salt and Light Radio, so you can find us on social platforms at Salt and Light Radio or Desert Wanderers Podcast. We produce episodes every week and we launch them for you on Wednesdays. So make sure to tune in for next week's episode and we'll see you then.